Hello friends, Princely CPA here, back with another video for you. Today we are going to talk about student athletes and the related, tax implications that they should be thinking about. So when it comes to college athletes, there's really just, a new era again. So in July 2025, the direct revenue sharing arrangements went into place. So that student athletes are now being compensated for their efforts and time. And then we've also have the name, image, and likeness opportunities to these students. And so with that, student athletes are now navigating, more complicated financial environments than they ever have. So we've now shifted from, the scholarships and all those sorts of things to what it's going to look like for these to be kind of like high income earners, essentially. So high income earners, not rich yet, sometimes referred to as Henrys. And so we've got to think about what are the implications for them from a tax perspective. And then really that means having, a team of people around them that can give them good advice and potentially hold them accountable. And so the first thing is to understand that student athletes with earned income or receiving payments during the year are going to be required to file some sort of tax return at the federal level and at the state level usually. So if you are a citizen of the United States or treated as a resident, that's going to be, your annual Form 1040. If you're an international student that's an athlete, you might have a 1040 filing for a non-resident, a 1040 NR. And so these all depend on the type of income and all those sorts of things. But we just need to know that you're going to have some sort of filing obligation. And because much of the way you earn revenue and much of the way student athletes are going to earn revenue is going to be between multiple states, there's probably going to be a multi-state tax filing, making it more common. So for the sources of income, usually they might have W-2 income, 1099 income, some amount of investment income as their earnings go up. And then if you are an international student, you might be subject to certain amounts of withholdings. So you might be having income reported on a 1042, which needs to be considered. 1042 are payments to non-citizen individuals that are subject to withholding. If you are an international student and you are, eligible for treaty benefits, you may be able to have a reduced withholding rate depending on the treaty that you may have access to. So it's important to understand that you might have if you want to claim those lower withholding benefits, that you need to file a Form W-8 to claim those treaty benefits with the payer to make sure that the withholding is at that lower rate. So when it comes to these income sources, if it's W-2 related income, there's not a whole lot you can do from a planning side. But for the amounts that are 1099, which is usually with a name, image, and likeness income, you basically become a business owner. And so that's where you can start having deductible expenses. So agent and manager fees, marketing and photography costs, social media and content production costs, travel related costs, to go on location and have appearances or sponsorships, mileage, transportation, equipment, legal and professional fees, all those sorts of things. It's important to know that when it comes to name, image, and likeness, that anything that clothing or hairstyles or anything like that that's suitable for daily wear are not deductible. Okay, so if it's going to be, and when it refers to daily wear, it means you could use it for something other than the specific purpose. So if you buy a new suit for a media appearance, it's not necessarily, it's not really going to be deductible. And putting a logo inside where it's invisible, not visible to the public, also doesn't really meet the meaningful standard that the IRS would count for. So those are going to be deemed personal expenses and non-deductible, but kind of everything to get you there could be a tax deduction. Student athletes are, probably gonna, if they aren't subject to full scholarship benefits, they probably will have tuition statements and that sort of thing. So be sure to track those when it comes to tax preparation. If you have international students, it's going to be more complicated. And so this is where, having someone like myself that works with, expats or inpats, inbound, individuals that are coming into the U.S. from abroad and understanding those tax implications. And so you really need to be thinking about tracking, a visa and your immigration documentation, passports, keeping entry and exit records from the United States, and then understanding what it's going to take to have those treaty-related benefits, and where you're going when you're not a student and what you're doing when you're going back home. So the tax rules for international students are going to be even more complex. So you're going to definitely need some professional guidance. But another thing to note when it comes to kind of business expenses and you're going to have 1099 income is to know that name, image, and likeness income is going to be subject to the special assignment of income doctrine. And this is to say that a lot of times people start using S corporations for tax planning and that sort of thing, which is well and fine, but understand that there's going to be some scrutiny in how these payments are made, how all the contracts are written, and all those sorts of things, because we will have the assignment of income doctrine. And so what is that? It's basically to say you can't have income that would be directly related to a person and then just and it'd be paid directly to a person, but report it on a business tax return. This is, when it comes to the assignment of income doctrine, really we're looking at all the paperwork that exists to make sure that if it's a name, image, and likeness, that all the contracting that goes into the revenue streams is done with a named entity, not a named person. And so that's the most important thing. When it comes to assignment of income doctrine, the IRS is going to look at, what do the legal documents say and who is contracted for this income? If it's going to be the natural person that is named in all of these legal documents, then that's where the income gets reported. If it's going to be an LLC of the person that is presumed to be the represented by this entity, then that's where we're going to be looking. And still that could be gray area if it were audited, but it's important to understand that when we start using LLCs and contracting with them and using different entity elections and that sort of thing, that it's really, really important to understand the risk and to understand the contracting as it relates to the assignment of income doctrine and the tax planning implications. And so that's a really, really, really important factor. Now, on the state side, there are going to be complexities. So federal filing obligations are going to kind of be, more familiar. We'll say that. But student athletes may have filing responsibilities where they attend school, where they're considered a resident, and then where income is earned throughout the year. So this could be the different states that you play games in and all those sorts of things. And so the multi-state filing process can be pretty intense and pretty difficult. So it's really important that you understand what filing obligations could exist on the front end, avoid unexpected liabilities, and then to also make sure that the record keeping is making a ton of sense along the way, because it could be difficult to recreate. So this, looking ahead, now that we're going to have all of these, these things occurring for student athletes, we have to understand that the obligation for being, conscientious and becoming more organized is going to be there, and that students are going to have to take a little bit of a different responsibility than they might have ever expected, or that means outsourcing to some degree. So they'll have to develop some sort of foundational understanding of tax obligations and what it's going to look like for long-term financial well-being and those sorts of things. And so this is where working with a team of advisors that work well together and making sure that everything is done, with the best interest of the student, and then also having a teacher's heart as it comes to these things. So having the heart of a teacher is super important when you're working with younger clients with things that they are less familiar with. So advisors should always have the heart of a teacher, but in the event that we're working with people that are really outside of the realm of, just a baseline foundational knowledge, that's where we really have to dig in deep and get really lean into that heart of a teacher. And so with all of these sources of income, there are tax planning opportunities for sure, but we also need to think about flexibility along the way. Students are young, they might have certain opportunities, and so to make every tax election under the sun might not make a lot of sense, purely from the fact that they're young, they don't know what they want to do, because when we make elections, we don't know that that's necessarily what we want forever. And so really we need to remember that tax elections and structuring information is great and everything, and it does create potentially tax efficiencies, but tax efficiencies at the risk of inflexibility does not do us well. So we can end up duplicating fees, locking ourselves into things that don't make a lot of sense for us in the future. And so need to take a holistic approach. So with that, if you've got considerations in this, a child, or you're an advisor with a client, or maybe you're having to catch this video on your own, just remember, you feel free to reach out below, and we can kind of like do a deep dive and have a conversation and see kind of where you're at and where you're going, and figure out what's best for you. So with that, I'll leave you with that video, and if you need to connect, feel free to click the link in the video description below. Back with another video for you soon. Take care. Bye.